Saturday Morning Trek, just one of many podcasts on Trek FM. If you'd like to help keep Star Trek discussion coming your way each day, consider becoming a network patron through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm and find out how you can become part of the team. That's patreon.com/trekfm.
This is DC Fontana. You're listening to Trek FM.
Get set now for action and adventure. Future's here for us to see. It's 2200 AD.
Their mission, to fight injustice, to right that which is wrong, and
to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Welcome to Saturday Morning Trek. Join us at Trek FM as we harken back to the days of wood-paneled dens, console televisions, and G.I. Joe action figures that towered over Barbie dolls. I'm Aaron Harvey, and today we're going to review the Ambergris Element. And if you're a regular listener, you might notice a bit of continuity error. This episode was recorded before our interview with Bob Klein, Filmation artist, so we reference upcoming things that have already happened, and it appears like I haven't talked to Adam in some time. If you haven't listened to part 2 of the interview with Bob Klein, I recommend you check it out because we talk about some of the Trek tech that's in this episode today. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Yeah, sorry, bad pun. Welcome to the wood panel den, Adam. It's been like forever since we've talked, it seems like.
I know, it's pretty great getting a nice big whiff of the pine sol fumes coming off that wood paneling. Plugged in the Atari. I have got a big old bowl of Frankenberry here. As promised in the last episode, I have been shoveling some F-berry into my face, and it's been glorious.
Yeah, I think if we do too long of a podcast, the box will be gone.
Yeah. The box itself, too. I'm going to start using the cardboard.
It's not the same Frankenberry I remember when I was a kid. It's got a little bit more of a Monsanto GMO sort of overtone to it or something. I don't know.
Well, it's got more fiber when you eat the box.
The other voice that you hear is Joe Slepski, who's the host of Joe on Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I appreciate having you on. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
Yeah, we do Joe on Joe. It's the only podcast where I, Joe Slepski, talk about Joe's G.I. Joe. And I promise you, it is the greatest G.I. Joe podcast that you will listen to during the half hour that you're listening to it.
Hosted by Joe Slepski.
Hosted by Joe Slepski,
okay.
Yes. We'll add even more caveats onto that. Yeah, yeah, it's great. We do. We watch every episode of the Joe Show, the 83, 84, 85 cartoon, and we watch them all in order, and we comment on them, and you're going to be a guest on it soon?
Yes, I'm going to be in a parallel universe episode.
Cannot wait to have you.
That will be very fun. But today we are talking about the Ambergris Element from Star Trek the Animated Series. We have far fewer episodes than G.I. Joe and actually far fewer toys than the show.
Yep, but much more fantastical.
Okay. Now, it would be really cool, actually, if we had some of the toys from today's episode, because we have some new technology that was introduced into the show.
Such as the Mattel packaged whale blubber.
Yes,
to sell to kids.
The ambergris, the fecal remains of whale intestine output, basically.
I want to be on the couch of the kid who's like the kid who lives in Maine, and his dad's a whaler, and he knows what ambergris is. It Amber or Amber?
I think it's ambergris. It's AMBERGRIS.
There's a B in there. Okay. Yeah, and so he knows what ambergris is, and he's watching it Saturday morning, and he turns on Star Trek, and he sees the ambergris, and he's like, Dad, get in here. They're going whaling.
Well, they actually do mention, what is a Danubian whale or something like that. So, it's a whale.
No, it's properly used.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like 99% of America is like, oh, that must be a strange, exotic planet that they go to. And there's 3 sons of fishermen who are like, I'm down with this episode. Yeah.
So before we dive in, let me give the viewers the listeners a little bit of an overview of what the episode's about, so they have some context as to this whale poop, and then we'll talk about when it aired, who wrote it, some of the voices, which will be very familiar to you at this point, and then we'll talk about what we thought of the episode. While exploring the water planet Argo, which appears to have only dead ruins as indicators of intelligent life, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock are lost from their survey party when their Aquashuttle is attacked by a giant sea creature. After a lengthy search, the crew of the Enterprise discover that Kirk and Spock have been mutated by an unknown hormone. Their hands are webbed, their eyes have a second eyelid. Do Vulcans have a third eyelid? And they breathe water now instead of air. Dr. McCoy's analysis indicates that this could not have been accomplished by a natural process, leading to the conclusion that intelligent life must still exist on the planet, but under the seas. Kirk and Spock return to the waters of Argo to investigate, whereupon they are captured by the sentient race of Aquans. Fearing the once air breathers mean them harm, the Aquan ruling tribunal sentences them to die on an unsunken landmass. The Aquan girl Ryla helps Scotty to find and rescue Kirk and Spock, but they receive bad news from the Enterprise. Ship sensors indicate a new seaquake will wipe out the Aquan underwater city within 2 hours. Ryla informs them that there are hidden records sunken in the ruins of how to reverse the mutation. The pair find the records, and after a close call with the sea serpent, return them to the Enterprise. Learning that the venom of the sea serpent is the key to reversing the mutations, Kirk and Spock are aided by Ryla and several others to gain some of the venom. Through trial and error, McCoy is able to use the venom to revert the officers. The Enterprise then uses its phasers to bombard an unpopulated area of the seabed, changing the epicenter of the massive seaquakes. Their city saved, the Aquans are grateful to Kirk and his crew and are vowed to allow the younger Aquans to explore life on the remaining surface landmasses if they choose to do so. This episode aired on December 1st, 1973. We're nearly at 1974. We always joke about that. It's like we're constantly stuck in the 73 era. It was written by Margaret Arman, who also wrote The Lorelei Signal, but she also wrote scripts for the original series, The Gamesters of Triskelion, Paradise Syndrome, and The Cloudminders, which was, I think, edited by David Gerald, we were saying.
It's a good one.
Polished, yep. And some of the other 70s shows that she worked on was The Mod Squad, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Wonder Woman. She did like the second episode, Wonder Woman meets the Baroness von Gunther.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just what is your plan, Baroness?
Nazi spies are wiring the wharf with dynamite. We're going to take you there, Wonder Woman. You and Major Trevor. Now, doesn't that sound cozy?
Huge fan here.
Jason of Star Command, which was another Filmation show.
Yep.
And the place that all animated series people who wrote seem to end up, Land of the Lost. So we had David Gerald, DC Fontana, Margaret Arman, Walter Koenig. There's somebody else that I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, a lot of
Norman
people.
Spinrad.
Yeah.
The writer of The Doomsday Machine.
Yes. So everybody ended up there, it seemed like. And for voices, James Doohan did 8 voices, though I might even challenge that because there's a lot of men and women background people that mutter words and stuff, so that has to be them as well. We have Majel Barrett.
And every third word was haggis.
Yeah,
so you knew that was Jimmy Doohan.
No, that was the power record. That you
right. That was the power record I was listening to.
So they basically did, I think Yesteryear was the only other episode that they did as many voices. And since the last episode when we had Tristan on, it was the last time that we saw Klingons in the animated series. This is the last time that we see Nurse Chapel on the animated series. She appeared in 6 of the 22 episodes, and the next time we see her is Dr. Chapel in Star Trek The Motion Picture.
It's so hard to say goodbye to Nurse Chapel. Ooh.
I've never had.
You're welcome for that.
I think Andy's the only person who ever sang on the show. Other than that,
now I'm what my wife likes to call a late life Trekkie. I discovered it. When I was a kid, it didn't super appeal to me. I was a Star Wars kid.
Yeah.
But as in my 30s, I watched like all the original series, and then I went and watched all the next gen stuff, and I really enjoyed all of it. Like I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna have some questions. So Nurse Chapel, though, that was Majel Barrett, right?
Correct.
So she played her on the original series, and then she married Roddenberry.
Yes.
And she was also the voice of all the computers in like every incarnation ever, right?
Yes, except for one episode in the animated series where she and Nichelle Nichols were in the same room, and she was talking to the computer. So rather than have her talk to herself, like she actually eventually did in Next Generation, they had Nichelle Nichols play the computer, which was just weird.
It's great.
There was no reason for it. So yeah, so she
that's cool.
That's it. And in this episode, she's half the female
She does a real good flat voice, I was thinking about in this episode, because the female Aquans have a certain sort of monotone to them that's very appealing to me. But then the computer has a certain monotone which is also very appealing to me, but in a different way. So I think Majel Barrett's big contribution, as I'm starting to uncover, is this sort of variations on very neutral different speaking voices.
Adam,
modulated.
That says a lot about your love life.
Enough said, I gotta say.
So now we know what kind of woman that Adam likes.
I've been with Siri for about a few years, ever since she was first introduced to the operating system. If you've seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, that was based off my life.
Scarlett Johansson.
She doesn't have a neutral voice. That's a very appealing voice, but not as appealing as the female Aquans, if you ask me.
So yeah, I have nowhere to go with that.
Well, this has been Saturday Morning Trek.
And goodbye. No. So, this episode was also turned into a novelization by Alan Dean Foster. And I know, Joe, you were saying, wait, they made books about these?
Yeah, I did. Well, I didn't know that they made books about. You said they've novelized all the episodes, right?
Yep, all the anime. They were called logs, I think, or something like that. So
and I've read a lot of Alan Dean Foster, and I know Alan Dean Foster's super prolific, but I've only read his Star Wars novels. So it's interesting that he went through with the canon of Star Trek and wrote, because I kind of want to read a novelization about Fish Kirk and Fish Spock.
Well, I'll let you borrow that on the way out. Out of the wood panel den, and as long as you return it to the Star Trek library.
Absolutely, always.
So, yeah, and the title of this we were talking about before, the Ambergris Element, is it basically is the waxy substance that is secreted by whale intestines, and it helps the perfume industry retain scent longer. And then now it's mostly, it's called ambroxan, or amber, which sounds like another Star Trek medicine, or ambroxan, a synthetic version.
That's my mom's maiden name, ambroxan.
What it sounds like to me, it sounds like when the Next Generation did a sequel to this story, and in the sequel, someone used ambroxan because they synthesized it, so they didn't have to travel all the way back to the planet.
There you go.
That's what it sounds like to me.
That would work. This is one of those episodes that you probably could have done in the Next Generation, special effects wise, but during this time period, it would have been impossible if it hadn't been done with a cartoon.
Oh, of course.
Or it would have looked like that cheesy Irwin Allen test movie for, was it Underwater City?
Well, it's funny. You mentioned Irwin Allen. I was watching Earthquake. It was on over the weekend last week, and I was enjoying it quite thoroughly. There are shots in this cartoon, cartoons, you have unlimited budget. You can do whatever you want. There are shots where they show the shaking and the destruction of earthquakes. They use the same camera tricks that they would use on the set of Real Life People, where they would just shake like the people. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go that cheap with it, and yet they do it in the cartoon. It looks like you could obviously tell they're just shaking it.
It's filmation.
Yeah.
They also had it was the most expensive cartoon on television at the time because of the voice actors. So there were ways that corners needed to be cut. It was also a really aggressive production schedule, and they that's how you'll notice when things fly, it's literally just somebody dragging a cell across the...
Well, I have a question for you. I watched this via Netflix, and are they restored or altered in any way?
Yes, they are now the HD version Blu-ray quality, which has now been put onto Blu-ray.
And did they redo any of the animation at all?
No.
Then I will congratulate them. The shot of the Enterprise kind of scooting across the planets looks amazing.
No,
it's really good looking, and
Yeah.
I assumed, because I know in the actual original series Blu-rays now and all that, they've redone the shots and redid the planets, and I thought maybe they redid some of the shots for the cartoon, but no.
And, one of the things that we talked about would have been interesting is if they had the budget, and that's part of it, is that this is kind of a limited audience of people who like the show. They could have gone in and digitally retouched, taken out scratches and removed hairs and things like that naturally get caught onto these acetate cells and stuff. They just didn't have the budget or time to do that. There was discussions of possibly rescoring it to have a broader, using the base score and then enhancing it so it wasn't the same 22 minutes of music used over and over again. Again, it was just it would be great, but we just don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
And the return on it wouldn't have probably netted out. In the future, who knows? I mean, that's not going to go away. It's going to, everything's been preserved. So, and I know, Adam, we were talking about preservation before we started talking, that the reaction to seeing it on Blu-ray was giving people a little bit of a heart attack, maybe.
I just think it's troubling when you see comments along the lines of, why is this being preserved? Does this deserve to be preserved and restored? Because to be frank, I think that's the kind of logic that leads to public book burnings. I don't think that anyone's personal taste should dictate what deserves to be archived or not. I think every sort of piece of art that is, of public value should have the option to be preserved for future generations to enjoy and appreciate what the artist was trying to explore at that time. And whether or not you actually think the value of the animated series as Star Trek or as a children's show or as just television in general is worthy of that should not factor into whether or not the rights owners of this property should invest the money into restoring it and preserving it.
Well, I mean, can you imagine if, the people at NBC who basically canceled the original series had their way, a lot of that stuff probably just would have been tossed, and it might not have, Star Trek itself could have just disappeared because, the general public probably, it's just cheesy science fiction. It's not worth keeping.
Less than 10% of the films made before 1920 don't exist anymore. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about how much of our film history is just lost to time because up until a few decades ago, people didn't know or cared what preservation and film restoration was.
Star Wars wasn't even preserved, which is totally boggles my mind.
According to George Lucas, it's, quote, still not preserved, and that's why he can't release it. And who knows who has the actual rights these days. Yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
I'm still waiting for the Star Wars Holiday Special, Blu-ray.
Fighting the Frizzies, man.
It's going to be a happy life day when they finally release that.
Absolutely.
That's for Darren, our previous co-host.
I just want the Diane Carroll segment on a loop. Put me in a room, close the curtains.
It's also insane that Chewbacca is like such a great classic name. And then his family is named Itchy and Lumpy and Scratchy.
Yes.
Yeah, Mala.
Well, Mala's not bad.
Mala's not bad, but yeah, Itchy and Lumpy are, and Lumpy's face looks like you started putting a Wookiee through a cookie press and then reversed it back out. Like you got the lips through and the nose through, and then you were like, all right, well, hold on a second, let's reverse this. Let's let him keep his face. Yeah.
I know the real title is the Star Wars Holiday Special, but everyone knows what it really is the Cocaine Holiday Special.
Totally, but that's what all the snow was.
Yes, and if you see Carrie Fisher in there, she has no memory of making that.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, yes.
Look at Hamill, too. Hamill looks gacked, and he has an amazing amount of eyeliner on.
Yes.
He's got the rosiest cheeks in the world.
He has more makeup than Carrie Fisher, to be honest with you, in this special. But
and this is before his car accident.
Harrison Ford looks like he's about 5 minutes from getting in his car. He is so over it. But I love the holiday special. I think it's a real trip to watch. And
I
that
think we're
cartoon's
going to have
great.
to do a special on that because we've talked about it enough. So it's
and that cartoon is
great. Saturday morning Star Wars holiday special.
Well, the best part of that is the cartoon with Boba Fett. And it's really great. It's really well done.
It looks like, did Ralph Bakshi do it? It looks like a Ralph
made
Bakshi.
by Nelvana.
Feels like it. Yeah.
And they were tapped to do what is it, the heavy metal movie, but they were working on their own Rock and Rule. So that's the one movie that they ended up putting out.
Heavy Metal is awesome. Everyone go download Heavy Metal when you're done listening to this.
And then watch the South Park tribute to Heavy Metal episode.
Major boobage.
Major boobage.
This weekend, Columbia Pictures takes you beyond the stratosphere with special midnight showings of Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal, rated R. This weekend, check newspapers for a midnight metal theater near you.
Should we talk about the actual episode that we're here to talk about today? So what did you think of the general story? Like was there a moral or a meaning, or is it just more of like a fun adventure?
It's a fun adventure. I think when you get down to it, the last episode we reviewed together, Mud's Passion, was just an absolute waste of time. There's nothing happening, and I mean, for 22 minutes, it's really stretched thin.
It was fodder for parts of Galaxy Quest, and that's about it.
That's a good point. But there's a lot going on. Like, this is a kind of a dense episode, and I enjoyed it, and I think it's really fun and sci-fi-ish, and they're just getting a little trippy with the animation, which I always enjoy. As far as morals, I do think there was one line at the end that I found really interesting, and they had set up this conflict earlier on when Spock and Kirk are captured by the Aquan Tribunes, the Council of Elders, and then there's Elder Tribunes and Junior Tribunes, and the Junior Tribunes said this. I love this line. I wrote this down. Can we do nothing without consulting the ancient records?
Yeah.
So they set up this sort of divide between the established culture of this Aquan race and the up and coming culture who do have a presence on the council, but at the end of it, when Spock and Kirk are about to leave, they learn that the Junior Tribunes have started to make adjustments to part of the planet to accommodate for air breathers, since they have come to understand their culture is not natively an aquatic species.
Right.
But the Elder Tribunes said that the senior Aquans can't adjust to a life as such, and the note I wrote was sad but real.
Yeah, it's very much the there was like a Twilight Zone episode where the Earth was going to be transformed because of a solar, like something happened with the sun. An alien sent this message in the form of music, and all the kids were listening to it, and they started changing their skin, and the grown-ups were like, oh, we can't, and then they realized, oh, it's actually protecting them. But most of the adults are like, no, I don't want that. I'll just live out the rest of my life like this. And it's just like, it's for the younger generation.
It's because all those adults were horribly racist.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, basically, it's what it was.
And that's a good analogy for some of the stuff that's happening now. It's
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I agree. I like the social aspect of it. It reminded me of the nephew from the very end of the Planet of the Apes, when he's like, "Keep 'em flying, kid."
Yeah.
And the flags of discontent. Like that next generation is what brings change.
Yep.
And that's what they're showing in this episode, where it's the young kids that are going to bring about welcoming in the new age. It's also a little bit of an environmental allegory, although I don't think they were saying that the creatures themselves were responsible for the tragedy on the planet.
No.
But definitely you have to be in tune with what's going on in your planet. Otherwise, you're going to get sucked up and roped in by a giant underwater lobster with awesome tentacle hands.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the threat.
I think that's the takeaway.
I think that's the real threat that we're facing
Yes.
today. It was not addressed in our current elections. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it was super dense. Like, even plot wise, it just kept flipping back. And just when I thought they were, okay, they're going to kind of resolve. Oh no, they had to go back and get the stuff for the space whale. I would like to point out that with the amazing webbed hands, they did not bother to take the boots off of Kirk and Spock, and they were swimming in boots.
Yes. There was a few things like that. They also had the optosurgery or whatever that turned them into that. They used the word antitoxin and antidote or something or whatever, changed them interchangeably, which they are not the same thing.
Okay.
So, I don't think they used a toxin to turn them into the swimming, able to breathe underwater thing.
Along those lines, not skipping to the end of it, when they said they only had enough to save Kirk, or just they had a small amount of it, and they had to do the 3 injections into Kirk, and he barely fought it. Don't Vulcans have different physiology than Earthlings?
Yes.
So conceivably, they might not have had the right dose for Spock, but they gloss over. They're like, all right, we'll take care of Spock next.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it going like, but what if he's different? Like, what if?
Well, when they were changed, they ended up getting a second eyelid. Vulcans already have a second eyelid, so do they have 3 eyelids?
Wait, what?
Yes, they mentioned that it's like a fish, the nectating membrane or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that on the show, but so Vulcans have 2 eyelids?
Yes, because there was an episode where he was exposed to what is it? Is there
no truth and beauty?
Thank you. Where it's the Medusans, these creatures that were so.
They're so ugly, but their thoughts are so beautiful that if you were to look at them, you go insane. So everyone else was not able to like be in the presence of the Medusan, but Spock had this. It's now kind of an iconic looking sort of red plastic visor, I suppose, and it's an
blue
interesting
blockers,
episode.
but red.
Is this on the animated or on the
original
live action?
series?
It's on the
Action.
original series.
Yeah.
I don't remember this at all.
It's a later episode, like season 3, I think.
Diana Muldaur was in it, who was in
right.
Dr. Pulaski in season 3 of,
sure.
Or 2 of Next Generation.
Yeah.
Just keeping the good Polish name alive in space.
Yes.
I think there's also a reference to the second island Enterprise when they go down to Vulcan in the desert, and he's like, where Archer's like, he's like trying to wear sunglasses, or he says something to T'Pol about, and she's like, no, I got 2 eyelids.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So, yes, so I was wondering if he had 3 eyelids at that point, or did they just not mutate at all? Or?
His second eyelid had a second
Well, I don't
eyelid.
think it was an extra eyelid. I think it was a membrane that coated the eyes.
Yeah.
To keep.
But I think they...
To regulate pressure. I think that's what it is.
Oh, is it? I think they used the term eyelid. I'm not sure. Maybe not.
I thought I heard membrane.
Okay, maybe it was membrane then.
But I'd like to think he has 3 eyelids now.
Yeah. Well, it's the membrane and then the extra 2. It's like, why would he need necessarily?
Right.
Yeah.
And what about his ears? Couldn't have his ears developed into some kind of fin-like structure?
Ooh.
Right?
More
fish,
like...
if you look at fish, they have like side fins and stuff,
Yeah,
and weird fins in weird places.
Sort of like, what is it, Submariner?
Yeah, or he would have looked like Merman from the He-Man show. He had those big ears.
Yeah.
You know?
Spock does kind of look like Namor the Submariner now that
Totally.
I think about it.
Totally does.
Put him in a Speedo, it's the same guy.
There's our next IDW crossover.
And Namor came first.
Yeah.
Namor came first.
Yep.
He was pre-Aquaman, that's right.
I think I have one of the first episodes of that for some reason.
Episodes of what?
All right, not episodes, sorry, issues of the comic book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was one of those, I don't know what this is, kid. Here,
well,
he
came for, I'm talking like Marvel Comics #1 stuff. I'm talking 1939, 1940.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Then,
literally,
no,
I think 1940. Actually.
He predated Aquaman, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Bill Everett made him, and he fought the Human Torch.
Well, since we're a room full of comic guys here, something I just read recently that reminded me of this episode is an issue of Star Trek TNG DC Comics.
Awesome.
It's called Friend or Foe. It's issue number 23. It was released in September of 91. And on the cover here, you can see Troy in a scuba outfit. And behind her is a sort of water creature who looks a lot like the...
It does.
Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So this was... they go down to a water planet, and there's a culture there who say they have these special statues that are very important to their culture, and they need to put them on the Enterprise. And Troy disappears, and she is with these sort of sea serpents, and they are a sentient culture that were being hidden by the other guys because there's like a civil war on their planet, and they consider them savages. And Troy's like, no, we got to save them, get those statues off the Enterprise. We got to put these fish guys up there. So
wow, now that gives me a whole new wondering if they were actually sentient then or something like that, and we just sort of like subjugated them to get some sort of ability to turn into fish people.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's a good issue. I was just talking about this the other day. That's I really do enjoy these TNG comics that are put out by DC during the run of TNG. I think these are some of my favorite Star Trek comics, and that's a really fun cover, really fun issue, and I recommend you check it out.
Definitely. That
also,
is cool.
You mentioned before, too, how this is something they could have done on TNG. They kind of do something similar to this in Voyager with the 30 Days. It's a water planet. I think that's just something that's appealing in sci-fi in general, just a water world, if you will. They made a big floppy movie out of that, but just a water planet's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they necessarily are fish people in 30 Days. They just live in a society underwater.
They found a planet that was just basically a giant ocean, and over time adapted to like living underwater and utilizing the ocean for production of goods and services. So it's essentially like living in space, but just under the water in space.
Right. Then that's the famous episode where Tom Paris gets the demotion back to ensign.
Yes. And he apparently was also a very big nautical person this entire time that we didn't know, and then we never hear about it again.
Right.
But that's what happens.
Well, there's a lot of nautical connections with Star Trek, right? Like,
there is, but this character.
But they treat. I mean, they always treat the ships like fleets in a nautical fleet, right?
In a nautical 2-dimensional flat plane world. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There's submarine culture that seeps through in a lot of episodes. There in the production design of the Enterprise NX-01 is very submarine influenced. The episode, not the Enemy Within, the Balance of Terror.
Oh yeah,
Balance of Terror. Everyone is always referring to that as like submarine battle.
Yep.
The Star Trek Wrath of Khan is like submarine battle. So there is that sort of impact on it, and the whole naval structure of Starfleet.
Well, yeah, and even in the writer's guide that was in the original, then Phase 2, and the Phase 2 got adapted into Next Generation, it said that it was a basic naval structure, and some of those naval traditions have, kept going through, but it wasn't military. Pseudo-military.
Was
basically.
Star Trek Beyond the first time we saw the Enterprise underwater, like fully submerged?
In like a film format? Yes. But in comics and stuff like that, long before that.
Did they went underwater in comics?
Yeah, in the UK comics we reviewed on episode 16, Star Trek Laid Flat, they had a cover that looked very similar to Star Trek Into Darkness, where the Enterprise started out underwater. It seems like it's not...
Was it Into Darkness, or was
yes.
it... Didn't they go underwater and beyond, or no?
Well, they went through those...
aqueduct
things, but they were not.
Right.
They were not
Yeah,
in the water.
right,
They were
sorry.
under
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and then they broke through it.
Right.
But,
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah. They started underwater when Kirk was getting chased by the people
that looked kind of like Jayla from Beyond.
Yeah. They
The
looked
Nibiru.
like in the from the King Kong remake island.
Yes.
Yeah, those people. Right. Okay. Yeah. So, but I thought that was cool. That was just a neat visual. And I've always said, like, yeah, if you can survive in space, they should be able to roll in water.
Yeah,
No, I don't know.
Not if you're like if there's pressure differences, because in space it's meant to keep it from
Right. Okay.
it's that lack of pressure, and then in underwater it's the increasing pressure.
But it's also 300 years in the future. We got
Yes.
we got double pressure at this point.
Right. I don't think there would be a reason why they couldn't. I mean, they took the Delta Flyer underwater, so
Right, and then there's that whole like thing of, well, this ship would never have been built on Earth. It had to have been built in orbit of Earth based on how it's designed. So let's just say they could land, they could fly, they can do whatever they want.
yeah, it's nanotechnology, like nanostructure, fiber, impenetrable things that break easily. No,
As I've always been enamored with how much damage the Enterprise can take from like missiles and warheads and stuff striking it, like, because it looks so fragile.
Yeah.
And yet whenever they get in the space fights in the movies and stuff, they're getting hit, and they're still able to function.
Speaking of animation, this episode reminds me a lot of the episode of Futurama where they go to the lost city of Atlanta.
yes,
Not Atlantis. They go to Atlanta, which is like Atlantis now, and there's mermaid people, and they have Donovan sing Atlantis, and it's great. If you haven't seen that episode of Futurama, which is very much influenced by Star Trek, check out where they go to the lost city of Atlanta.
Well, and speaking of Atlanta and Atlantis, there's a big Greek influence in the design. If you look at, there's sort of the caduceus medical symbol. It sort of looks like that, and
It's like a Parthenon type, like these Greek Roman columns and
yeah.
stuff.
And I don't know if that's like shorthand for kids who are like, oh, that means it's old, so I get it, or if that was supposed to be like maybe one of the many creatures that sort of influenced Earth culture, like the what is it, the Roman or the Greek god from the original series, Apollo, him, or the future episode that we will have with the
How sharper than a serpent's tooth.
Yes, the what is his name?
Quetzalcoatl.
Yes. The dragon creature who apparently visited...
No, it's Kukulkan.
Kukulkan, that's it, yes. Kukulkan for Cocoa Puffs. That was the joke that I always had when I was a kid. And, maybe he influenced it because he influenced other cultures. So who knows? It's like, it would be curious to see if the idea was that this, or the seed race people or whatever, because it feels like it kind of plays into Earth a little bit, but not. But yeah, so I thought it was interesting that it did look a lot like Atlantis. That was my first thought when it rose out of the water. I'm like, oh, it's Atlantis, right? And they never mentioned that, which is odd, especially because it was the 70s, and that was a big, in search of kind of...
Maybe they didn't want to give any love to the man from Atlantis that might have been on the Earth at the same time.
Maybe.
Patrick Duffy, man.
Yeah.
That's like the best part of this podcast is you just... When was the last time you heard about the man from Atlantis or Super Train or Condor or any of these freaking shows that are so lost of time?
Super Train is never going to be forgotten. No.
Not as long as you're around, man.
I've got all the issues of the Man from Atlantis comic book.
Oh.
Published by Marvel. George Perez covers.
Oh man, George Perez, awesome.
We will have to look that up. That's interesting. Story-wise, we have basically the thread that seems to run through it is if you're a younger generation, don't. I'm trying to figure out if it was sort of a subversive, fight the man kind of conversation because it was the early 70s, the end of Vietnam, all that, or if it was just this was a fun way to present this idea. I'm trying to figure out if there really was a deeper idea there, or if it's just accidentally came off as slightly deeper.
I feel like it wasn't accidental. It was very much on purpose because you look at what the state of change that Kirk and Spock went through, and the change of society is what the kids wanted the parents to go through.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. It's all about accepting that that with time, change is going to happen. New things are going to be introduced to society. New things are going to happen to your body. You got to accept it.
Don't be afraid of new things.
Don't be afraid of new things. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's also this sort of interesting thing, to reference another Voyager episode that it made me think of, is the episode Ashes to Ashes, where Lindsay Ballard is abducted and presumed dead. She is dead, and then is resurrected by an alien species and turned into that species. And this sort of heady conceit of what if an alien species is unable to reproduce naturally and instead relies on transforming other races, and what are the ethical and moral implications of that? Very interesting. I don't know if they are able to go any deeper than what they actually do with that in 22 minutes for a kids show.
Yeah.
But I always thought, and especially in Voyager and in this as well, it's a pretty heady concept.
Well, I think an interesting distinction, I like what you're saying, is that the kids changed them to save their lives, but then the society was casting them out. So they were making them like them, but they were still saying you still can't come live with us.
Yeah,
you still got
different.
to go.
Yeah,
like, get out of here. So that's an interesting difference there.
And it would be interesting if they would take the stories and maybe like do more adaptations similar to what Alan Dean Foster did, but just actually instead of a kind of beat for beat story, which there were some differences in the books, actually expand on that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you could do some really interesting things with like Kirk kind of wrestle with like, can I be a captain like this? I mean, we have other aquatic creatures in Starfleet. We have to. I mean, so there's.
He addresses that. He says, like, what are my choices to live like live in an aquarium or or die on the surface or something like that. Yeah.
You could still expand on that, or just what it's like. There was interesting because I saw somewhere in a message where people were like, well, it's so stupid because the Aquans are sitting on like what sort of looks like a Parthenon,
like a dais,
yeah, and it's just like, but they were originally land creatures, so there is something still left over from when they were on the ground. I mean, they stand instead of float, and they.
Yeah, I mean, can a fish sit? I mean,
yeah,
like what? How picky are you? Come on, people.
One of my favorite the best animated show of all time, The Simpsons, when Homer and Mr. Burns, they bond over having a good sit.
Yes,
everyone loves a good sit.
Yes, and he bangs the table with his feet to get the bowl of food. I mean, it's the best.
You ever sit like this? Oh yeah.
Hey, listen, we have a betta fish at home, and there's a leaf that you're supposed to put in the tank, and literally the fish sits on it.
Really?
Yeah, like for real, like it rests on this.
Okay, yeah.
It rests on it. So
yeah, I mean, you can't constantly be like exerting force to keep up.
Hey, message board person, quit interneting on the internet, all right?
The funny thing is that was from 2004 maybe or something, so it's definitely back when people
early trolling,
yes, where you're like, wow, this is a nice comment. This is an understanding and thoughtful comment. Like, wait, is this the internet? I'm confused. And I also noticed that the Majel Barrett's kind of the main, Ryla, I think was her name. She sort of started out with a Russian accent for just a few moments, and then it just kind of disappeared.
Well, again, back to Carrie Fisher. It's the first few minutes of Star Wars. She's very British, and then it goes away.
I feel like that was the kind of thing where she's like, I'm filming in Britain, I got to keep up with these guys. And she's like, nope.
Yep. But by day 12, she's like, I'm done.
Peter Cushing gives her some side eye. Nope.
Maybe she got the same direction that Marina Sirtis got from Roddenberry, that was, your mother has this very unusual accent, and so she creates this whole European sort of accent, and then Majel Barrett comes on as the mom, and she just has no accent. So maybe Carrie Fisher thought that, Padma Amidala was actually, slightly British, and then it turns out she's not.
Yeah, early Troy has this, and I love Troy. I'm a big fan of Deanna Troi. Mm-hmm. She has this sort of It's like a mix of some sort of European, some sort of Israeli, Mediterranean.
You
like,
can use the word crazy accent.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, psychotic.
Yeah,
but,
as an outsider looking in when I first watched those, I was like, "What is going on with?"
So
her
we have to just be
voice?
left that it's her father had that accent. I guess apparently because her mom sounds normal,
right,
or American English.
It settles into some sort of pleasant, non-neutral American accent towards the end, but early on, it's pretty wild for sure.
Now that mankind is on the threshold of the galaxies, a new hero has come forth to lead us into the future. Introducing the new G.I. Joe astronaut. He has lifelike hair and talks the language of tomorrow.
10 seconds to lift off and counting.
Go with him on daring missions like the Flying Space Rescue. Get the new G.I. Joe talking astronaut and collect astronaut adventure sets. G.I. Joe astronaut, now with lifelike hair from Hasbro.
So one of the things that we talk about on Saturday Morning Trek, Joe, is the kind of the Trek technology.
Yes.
And there's a few things in here that we hadn't seen before and that we don't see again, really. We had the Aquashuttle, which was the ship that they're on when they first get there, which is sort of I could say it was like it's like a regular shuttlecraft, but just
It wasn't much of an Aquashuttle though, because it had an open canopy.
No, that's the Scouter gig. That's after. That's
the one that they were on
that's
the surface
Starfleet
with?
bass boat, basically.
Yeah, they were. That's not the Aquashuttle.
No, the first is when they started out. It's covered.
Oh, okay.
And so they could have gone, and then maybe they did go underwater. But it was the one that was crashed up on the shore.
Right. That crash looked pretty cool.
Yeah. So it would make sense that, given the different environments that the Enterprise encounters, that they would have, a shuttle that was capable of being on the water, or a boat or something like that. The Enterprise in Nemesis had the Argo, which was the
all-terrain vehicle.
Fun thing that basically Patrick Stewart requested, that he wanted to drive a dune buggy of some kind. So they created it. But it would make sense that they would have different vehicles for different environments.
Of course.
We've got the bike on the Franklin, the motorbike. We don't know if that was just because somebody wanted it or beyond. And it worked after hundreds of years, which was nice.
Yeah, I was when I saw Beyond. Obviously, I saw the trailer with the motorbike, and I was a little
Yeah.
We're just because it's Fast and the Furious, we have to go. But I thought it worked well in the movie. I thought it worked perfect. Yeah.
And apparently, the Franklin was supposed to be earlier was a cargo vessel, though I'm not quite sure. It's not very big, so it wouldn't have carried much cargo. But having this Aquashuttle and the Scouter gig makes a lot of sense. We had digital binoculars, the telefocals, which were the big binocular type things that they were using because they could see quite a distance with it. And they also had a new piece of Starfleet search party equipment, which was sort of a singular scanner, as opposed to the tricorder, which they've used as a scanner before. I guess this was something that was much more sophisticated, and it has a slight visual resemblance to a Vulcan tricorder from Enterprise, so maybe it's an adapted piece. I mean, we're retconning this, obviously, because the show did not exist in 1973, but...
It also looked like the game Simon.
Yes, which we actually mentioned in our last episode.
Oh, did you?
Yep. There were alien creatures on Voyager in an episode that was very similar to the Time Trap. They lived in this void, and they ended up communicating with like sound tones that the Doctor taught them, and it sounded like someone playing Simon. It's like beep boop boop beep boop beep beep boop. So yeah, no, that was pretty cool. And my favorite part though is using the life support belts instead of diving suits, because they put these on and they can just walk around with the glow underneath them or on them. And
yeah, the glow looked cool. So James Doohan, I love Scotty. He even in the animated series they drew him kind of chunky. They did. Like kind of foreshadowing the weight that he would eventually put on. Like
he was stout.
Right? And I'm like, even in a cartoon, you can't give a guy a break.
Well, there's some of the not freeze frames, but some of the kind of like promotional pictures. He's got a six pack and a big chest. So yeah,
he's a big, good looking Scotsman.
Yeah, but he did eventually.
Yeah.
Kind of drift away from that. If they did an animated series for one of the movies, that would have been an interesting drawing challenge. Like, what do you do with that? Do you show the person as they are, or a more idealized version, or? Obviously, at that point, I think Shatner already had a girdle.
Oh,
so he had a girdle by season 3 of TOS.
Yeah,
totally did.
So he was drawn more unrealistically in some ways. Unless there's a girdle layer underneath that we didn't see if you pull the cells apart. That would work. So that's kind of like the new technology that we saw, and we unfortunately didn't see these ever again. And okay, so when they changed them back, they did the whole medical thing where we mentioned the injection stuff. In a few episodes previous, we saw them use the transporter to do something similar. I wonder why they didn't decide to do that, or if that would just became
where like the transporter separated out the cells that were bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think that obviously then you wouldn't have the pressing need to go into the city and all that stuff. But it's just sort of interesting that they didn't even bring that up as an option. Like they could have said, "Oh no, we can't do that because X" or something like that. As a throwaway line.
There was a moment when the ship first crashed, they talked about the like Scotty. I think Scotty shows up like, "I lost them on the transporter." And I always wonder why. Like it's always convenient when they lose them on the transporter, because aren't the badges that they wear? Isn't that like their transporter connection? Like isn't that what connects them to the transporter? Or no?
That's the communicator. I don't know if,
and that's in Next Generation,
right? I don't know if it, like when they say "get a lock on us," I always assume it's their life signs, right?
Yeah. So
I monitoring their life signs, if it's the computer or the badge themselves, who knows?
I love that the writings. Sorry.
Maybe there's something built into their belts, or I don't know.
I do love that the writing staff is smart enough in all generations and iterations of the show to always add that one line of "I can't lock you," because anyone watching it would go, "Just teleport him."
Right.
Before he falls off that cliff.
Yeah.
Right. And then my favorite workaround was also Voyager, where they get a skeletal lock.
Yeah.
She's like, you got, and that's a reaction that Janeway had. She's like, a skeletal lock? She's like,
that?
I locked onto the minerals in their bones.
Whoa.
Which is a smart idea, because that seems like that would be part of what you would do anyway. I mean, the body it has things, and that's, it's what differentiates you from like the rock that you're next to. And
well, I mean, I don't. You guys have probably tackled this at some point. Are you transporting their matter, or are you duplicating their matter? I mean, I understand that that's a whole different conversation.
There is a show on our network called Metatrex, and they talk about all the metaphysical dilemmas that episodes have brought up, and that is one of those. And like, I don't think there's an answer to it.
No.
And I don't think Riker would ever transport if he thought that it was making copies, because he was so anti, like, I don't want another copy of me.
Because he met one of his copies on that episode.
Yeah, and he was very upset. So I don't think, at least in his mind, that it's not making a copy. It's just moving you from place to place.
It's like someone else compared it once to the end of that movie, The Prestige.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Where you find in the basement all these dead clones of Hugh Jackman. Mm-hmm. So it just like disassembles your body. And then, spoiler alert for a 10-year-old movie, guys. Apologize.
Have you not seen, Aaron?
No, I have not seen
The Prestige?
Nope.
It's great.
Yeah, Prestige is really great. But I would probably be along the lines of, it kind of takes you apart and then rebuilds. So it's a matter of the soul. Like, where does the soul come from?
Well, and also depends, like, now we are going into Metatrex, but is your body just sort of an antenna for the soul? Like you can build a radio out of anything that's going to pick up, this radio station. That doesn't make the signal different. It just makes the receiver different.
Right.
So if the receiver is your body and your soul is the signal, then it doesn't matter what receiver you're using. That soul's just going to come out of the speaker of your body.
Right.
I don't know. Or whatever makes you. If you don't believe in a soul, that's fine.
You can replace pieces of a car.
Right.
And is it the same car? You yourself.
They even had, that was another episode. It was the Starship Theseus, because it was a Greek ship, I believe. It was, is this ship, after it's been rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt, and there's no original piece left, still the Theseus? And that was sort of what they, is the Enterprise still the Enterprise? Because it's been destroyed so many times and then refitted, and then
once it's been destroyed, it's just Enterprise Part 2. I mean, I know I know they have the different designations, the D and all that stuff, but you just got a new boat.
But just going from the original one to the refit for the movie, to another refit from before whatever, when it's damaged, and just all
doesn't it straight up blow up in Wrath of Khan, right? Or 3?
It's 3.
It's straight, because then in 4 they're in the Klingon ship.
Yeah.
So it's straight up gone. So everything after 3 is literally a brand new everything.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that people always get so hung up. Like, the movie's blowing up the ship again. It's happened 3 times.
Yeah, it totally
out of 13 movies, it happened in number 3, it happened in number 7, and number 13. So, great batting average, haters. There are the episodes like Cause and Effect where it blows up every 5 minutes, but I don't count that.
Yeah.
Because that's not what they're arguing.
No.
Haters.
So, I think we're kind of rounding third base here. Is there, and I don't know if that's actually correct, if that's a sports ball term that I don't know, but I think I'm using properly.
Sports ball.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch.
Home stretch.
We're rounding third. Yeah.
Okay.
Rounding third, heading for home.
Is there any kind of any wrap-up thoughts, anything that you want to throw in that you may not have mentioned already? Any favorite characters? Any favorite lines?
I thought the animation looked great. I do have a pet peeve when they do underwater scenes and they don't go to the effort of giving us like bubbles or waves.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that in this, and then
it just sort of moving.
Yeah, when the action picked up, then you got a lot of the green. At least on my screen, it was green, like the green wavy lines till underwater. But in those scenes where like when they're sitting and people are complaining about that, there's no bubbly, there's no anything to denote like that. I always dislike that, but it's not just Star Trek cartoons. You see that a lot.
Yeah.
I always like when they take the effort to make it look underwater. But otherwise, I thought it looked great. I really was impressed with the way the Enterprise looks in those opening shots.
Well, and Filmation does a really good job with their background images. Those always look like you could put them on a wall. I mean, they're still 70s looking. They have a style, but they're well done. Did
they also do the Planet of the Apes cartoon?
No, I believe that was Hanna-Barbera.
Because I watched an episode of that randomly once at like 3 a.m, and there was this painting, and people always hate on the Filmation, but this was something completely different. There was like a painting of an ape congress, I guess you could call it.
Oh, yes.
And it was like the most gorgeously detailed painting. It would just like zoom in and pan around, and it would just be like a painting. Like, there's no animation. But I'm like, this is insane. I love it. But
it kind of felt like they were trying to do almost, if you watch the intro to the Planet of the Apes cartoon, they also have a lot of stills and stuff like that.
Yes.
I wonder if it was like a stylistic choice.
It was a style, and I thought that was really interesting. But yeah,
they were trying to match the title cards for the first one.
Oh yeah,
which are very much like that.
Yeah.
I love Planet of the Apes. That's another franchise that I could wax on for hours.
Well, if we ever end up doing just a general 70s show, we can.
Well, we should do one on the Star Trek Planet of the Apes crossover.
Well, that's literary treks. We have we kind of have siloed.
Listen, I don't want to anger any Trek camps. I don't need
no.
I don't need them hot on my heels.
It's just hosts that we
hot on the trail of Joe and Joe Pod at Joe and Joe Pod at joeandjoepod@gmail.com. If you want to harass me, build my numbers. Go for it.
Well, we're not quite there yet, but we will ask you where we can find you after the show. No. See, Joe has not ever listened to the show, apparently. No,
your show?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm kidding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we started out with kind of a loose structure, and it's fallen into a pretty regular structure. It's kind of interesting.
Well, this show is, I'll say this for you listeners, it's very well produced.
Thank you very much.
And I can see that a lot of care goes into it. So honestly, I don't know in what order you guys are actually recording, like in what, because you have like nice pockets of segments and stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, you'd be recording it completely backwards. But either way, it comes out sounding wonderfully. So
thank you.
Kudos to you.
Well, Adam and I, we really like the source material, and we try to treat it as, like we had Mud's Passion. Neither of us love that episode. There's not a lot to it, but we found stuff we can talk about. And
I like that Mud guy.
Send all complaints.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I like him. I think he's funny.
Women, call Joe.
Well,
no, there's some interesting moments in there and stuff like that. And I actually have to admit, the one with the robots was kind of funny, where they basically the Enterprise crew tries to drive the robots crazy on, what was it, Mud's planet? No.
Mud's Women. Or iMud.
iMud, yes. Which is a play on iRobot, I'm assuming. Yeah. So there are moments, but
did they ever bring Mud back in like Next Generation or any of those other Voyagers? Or
no, they talked about it, but they did not.
There's probably some novels and
they
comics.
They talk about it on the show, like in the show. Oh, okay, just
no. But apparently, what is it in the? I want to say the 2009 movie, like one of the shuttles or something that they used was actually Mud's shuttle.
Oh, really?
Or something like that. Yeah,
you are correct. Yes, I remember reading that. Yes.
Yeah. So in a way, but no.
Oh, and here, and just like a spiritual son, maybe the outrageous Akona.
Yeah, he's very much
because the Tribbles.
There's
That's
tribbles
what
and
it was. That's how they got
Oh,
the tribbles.
that's right,
Yes,
yes.
there was a mud connection in that movie. Yes, totally was.
But I think the closest they would have gotten in TNG is or Captain Akana, or I don't know. I can't remember because I feel like
Outrageous Okana or
they pronounce it both ways in the episode. I think so. However you like.
That's the same with
Okana.
Lieutenant Gabler or Gabler on the animated series.
TNG is 40 years after.
I think it's like 70 years
70?
after.
Is it 70?
Yep.
Okay, but
because
McCoy was on it, right?
McCoy,
But he's super old.
Yeah. I just started doing my TNG 30 rewatch because I don't usually rewatch any of these shows in sequential order, so I just kind of watch whatever I feel like. But for the 30th anniversary of TNG, I'm going in order, so I just saw old McCoy, so that's been nice.
I'm watching them along with Mission Log.
Cool.
I do have a question about the episode. So the reason they went to the planet in the first place was to prevent earthquakes on another planet.
Another planet, yeah. It's similar.
But I don't recall. What did they learn about the planet that would help save the other planet?
They used the phasers to release pressure or something like that in the pockets.
Is that it?
Something to that effect on the bridge when they had the Aquan in the spacesuit, which you could have worn if you were Aquan, and they were on the bridge, and they were explaining to them how they were going to help the planet. But the thing is, they seem to know how to do that. So I'm not sure if they
total MacGuffin. It's a total MacGuffin. It's just some dumb reason to get into the planet.
I'm assuming that they took readings or something like that would have helped them. But no, they didn't really wrap that up. And that was kind of my one, like, okay, why were you here again? Yeah, it didn't resolve itself really satisfactorily.
I did find it funny that they set it up with it's a whole planet of water, and then the very first shot they're like, oh look, land.
Yeah. Well, and the question is like, was it just they had some sort of giant seismic activity that just the whole I don't know, it's like crazy. In which case, I don't think you can actually help that. I mean, you can evacuate the people, or you can turn them into fish people, I guess. You could say,
And at what point do you violate the Prime Directive? When your planet is doing whatever a planet's going to do, aren't you?
That's a whole question that we never actually got into, and maybe that's an interesting thing to end with. That this is totally against the Prime Directive, and have we mentioned the Prime Directive in the animated series? I'm trying to remember if that's actually been brought up.
Not to my knowledge.
No, I don't think up to this point. I believe maybe later they do, but no, and there was no reason for them to be there. It's a pre-warp civilization that was literally minding its own business underwater and did not want to be bothered at all. They threw Kirk and Spock out. That's pretty much stay away from these people. They'd already violated the Prime Directive, I think. So
interesting.
That's my thought. But that isn't new for Kirk and crew. I mean, that's sort of...
They play fast and loose.
Yeah. The cowboy diplomacy is they mentioned in First Contact? No.
Undiscovered Country, and then later in the two-part Unification.
Yep.
You guys...
And later in, I believe, in Voyager, even.
You guys are for real so freaking impressive. And I mean that with all due respect. It is ridiculous how encyclopedic you guys are. When I've listened to the show, I really thought...
Would you like me to remember what I have to do next week?
No,
I can't do that.
I really thought when I've listened to a lot of episodes of the show, and I've always thought like some of the stuff you guys had written down, scribbled notes somewhere. I'm watching you off the top of your heads go, oh no, that was a line from Undiscovered Country. And I'm like, what? Okay.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Somebody said that we're not fans as much as we are studying Star Trek.
Your human DVRs.
Yeah. So when we have the robot overlords that take over and destroy all,
you will have a place in their regime.
We already know the show, so we can tell them to all the people as we walk around the devastated country and reenact Star Trek episodes.
It's like the Dragon Reign of Fire.
Yes,
when they're reenacting Star Wars for the young children because they have no means of entertainment.
Directed by Rob Bowman of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
What?
Deep cuts.
Those are the deep cuts you will not find on Joe on Joe.
Oh, boy.
Well, trying to save Star Trek for future humanity isn't the only thing we've been doing on Trek FM this week. Here's a listen to some of the things you may have missed elsewhere on the network.
Previously on Trek.fm, Standard Orbit.
I opened up the garment bag, and I see this, red tunic. This top, and wait, this looks really familiar. So I try it all on. I try on all the wardrobe. Everything fits great. And I look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, holy bleep. And I turned to the wardrobe supervisor. I said, "Is this Star Trek that I'm working on?"
To the journey!
Leola is a substitute for any ingredient he doesn't have.
No sugar, Leola root.
Yeah. No bananas, Leola root.
No coffee,
Leola root.
Saturday Morning Trek.
Roddenberry was very involved with the first episode. And for that episode, we needed to come up with the derelict spaceship. And as a result, as the brand new guy on the crew who had spaceships and stuff in his portfolio, I got the job of coming up with that ship.
Stage 9, a podcast about the people who make Star Trek.
I mean, obviously, you have Nicholas Meyer writing for your Star Trek show. Is there any way that they're not going to be like, hey, Nick, you want to direct an episode? Because, I mean, like, would they... I mean, I cannot see any scenario in which they'd be like, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's right for this gig.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Where can we find you when you're not thinking about Majel Barrett's monotone voice?
You can find me crossing and uncrossing my legs on your couch. You can find me on Twitter at dr0sin. That's the number 0 in the middle. Instagram, Adam Drosen. And you can find me watching Batman Beyond. I'm going through my rewatch. The last time we were talking about Batman Animated Series, which is legendary 90s cartoon. And
love it.
So good. Holds up so well. So I was thinking about that, rewatching that. And then I got into a little Batman Beyond, which is the futuristic, Batman where Bruce Wayne's an older guy and he's mentoring this newer, sleeker, crazier Batman. So get us some Batman Beyond, guys.
It's great. That's a great show.
Nice. And where can we find you, Joe?
Well, Joe on Joe Pod, man. Anywhere you find your podcast, you can find Joe on Joe. I'm on Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod and Facebook /Joe on Joe Pod. You can send me an email at joeonjoepod@gmail.com. One of the things I like to do on my show is I like to get fans as guests. So we do a lot of Skype stuff because for me, G.I. Joe is always about like the community and stuff. So we get some people from all over the world on as guests and talk about some good G.I. Joe stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that the Aquashuttle could have been a G.I. Joe toy.
Oh, it totally could have been. Totally could have been. It would have fit right into like the air sea land platform.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Joes always, there's a running gag, they always fight in swamps.
Yes.
The G.I. Joes are always fighting in swamps. So like that Aquashuttle would have been coming really handy when they're going up against the Dreadnoks.
There you go. And you can find me on the network, hosting, obviously, Saturday Morning Trek with Adam. I will be hosting February's Roundtable, and I can be found on the Babel Conference. That's Trek FM's listener Facebook group. That it's a private group, but if you give us a shout, we'll let you right in. I'm also the Trek FM art director. And if this comes out before February 15th, is that when Joe works at Golden Apple Comics, by the way. If you're in Los Angeles, you can...
It's the best shop in L.A. It's Melrose and La Brea. When you come to L.A. and you're going to go to Pink's Hot Dogs, which is a legendary hot dog place, just look over your shoulder and you're going to see Golden Apple Comics.
Yep. I have a cover for IDW's Star Trek Green Lantern crossover coming out in mid-February, I think the 14th or 15th, whatever Wednesday is. And it will be the one, it's a variant cover. It's the one with it's very graphic design style. It's got the Enterprise with Hal Jordan flying underneath it, activating his ring, and it's kind of pulsing out the Green Lantern symbol.
And I'll be the one to say it looks amazing, Aaron. Like it's beautiful cover, and it's primarily black with like these, with like bright green. The only other colors really are green, and it's gorgeous. It looks like a Green Lantern construct, and when you look a little closer, oh no, there's the Enterprise as well. It's awesome. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, I'm going to have a waterbed delivered here, and I've had some problems with the wood panel den this winter that people might know about, that I've had some flooding, and I don't have the ability to grow gills, so I think maybe we might want to get out of here.
Can we lay in the waterbed and watch the Poseidon Adventure?
Sure, why not?
Make it a double feature with Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, starring Michael Caine.
Oh my God, yeah, totally. And then maybe we'll watch The Reef.
Ooh, The Reef, okay.
And Man from Atlantis.
This is
going to be a long day.
Orca.
Now remember, there is an animated series.
Somebody help me!
like a scissor. Keep up a steady rhythm. Now cup your hands downward and move them in a figure 8 motion.
I'm treading water.
You got it. Never play around water alone.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!